Hi, this is John Wren. It's almost 12 o'clock, so this is the Startup Show. And we are live at noon each Friday, Mountain Daylight Time, now starting next week. Don't forget to spring forward this Saturday night, or you're in for a big surprise Sunday morning. My family did that one time. We got all dressed, went to church, but it was in the fall. It was when one way or the other, we ended up after the shooting was over. So spring forward, Saturday night. This is the Startup Show. We're going to talk about Save the Caucus, what's going on with the #1 networking event in the state where more people can meet more people than anywhere else. And you can be a part of the political insiders if you want to, just by showing up at the caucus, show up at the county convention, show up at the state convention. And especially this year, we're going to talk about those opportunities that are still ahead. We're also going to talk about how to get help and business cards. So this is the Startup Show. If you'd like to be on the show, call me Monday or Tuesday, 303-861-1447. That's 303-861-1447. We'd love to have you on to share about your startup experience or how you can help startups. We try to be helpful to people who are starting in a new direction with their work, starting a new career. Maybe you just want to get a job in the direction of your dreams. Sometimes that's the very, very best way to get started. Rather than get another bachelor's degree, how about getting a job in the direction of your dreams? You know, sometimes we learn on the job things that you just can't learn any other way. And then by the time they're teaching a class about it, that information's old and the people out there working have moved on to something new. So get a job in the direction of your dreams. We try to be helpful with that here. Or, maybe you're just starting a new project. You've got a business, but you're kind of starting a business within the business, starting a project or a campaign. You've decided that you want to be a precinct committee person or a political office holder. You want to run for elected public office or help other good people get elected. Hopefully the show is helpful for that. And then finally, if you want to start a business, which is, I believe, the highest calling in life, is to start your own business. Of course, I was influenced. My dad did that. I've tried to do it repeatedly. You know, sometimes we teach because we cannot do. I could maybe talk with you about how to be a quarterback, but John Elway certainly. Now, I may in some ways be a better coach to teach you how to throw the ball than John Elway because he does so many things naturally. And sometimes people in business are that way too. The very successful people, Dr. Amar Bahidi and I have talked about this. He has written a book that Inc. magazine, when it first came out, said is the most important book ever written about startup, the origin and evolution of new businesses. And it's contrary to everything you hear from the SBA, everything you hear from the Kauffman Foundation. It's sort of in the direction of lean startup, but much more so. It's very much just start. Harvard Business Review Press published Lynn Schlesinger, Charlie Kiefer's book, Just Start. I thought, well, this will go to the top of the bestseller list. Harvard Business Review Press, Just Start. You haven't heard of it, have you? It just fizzled because it's so contrary to the conventional wisdom that's out there in every business school right now that says, do careful market research, do careful planning, be in the business plan competition and learn to write business plans. That's going to help you be better at starting. But businesses don't start that way. If you look at business in this country today and business in this country in 1953, when the Small Business Administration was started, you have to ask yourself a question. What has the SBA done for small business? It has just about killed it. And I don't know when they're going to wake up. Now, I think the SBA does do some useful things. Once a business is in existence, Patagonia, they have a woman there, her husband died. They helped her save Patagonia, according to this video. You never know the full story. Because once you're beholden to the SBA because you need that money, I sort of discount what I see on their little videos. You know, successful Yeah, a guy told me one time he had worked for McKinsey, the big consulting firm. He said, you know why consultants have to charge a lot of money? Because you never get any credit. Have you ever heard a CEO say, you know, I was really stupid, but I brought in McKinsey. They told me. Nobody says that. And, you know, the same thing's true in lots of other areas too. So you're not going to hear necessarily any good things about. And then you look on the SBA site and there are all these testimonials. Really? You know, I did a workshop one time for a big newspaper that I was working for doing the marketing. We invite all our customers in and we're saying, now share with us what you've learned about newspaper advertising. These were competitors in the same market. One of them said, do you think we're going to tell you how great your newspaper is? It frankly is. I don't have competitors here, but here's competitor. Are they, if it's working for them, or if it's not working for them, are we going to warn them off? I mean, there's not going to be good information coming out from sharing in this particular format. Sometimes good information is shared, but it has to be carefully orchestrated. And we've learned to do that at the Idea Cafe because we've been doing that brainstorming for over 20 years. We've learned some techniques. Head of one of the big foundations came to one of our meetings just to see what he said. He'd learned things about brainstorming that he'd never known, that it was very helpful, and he was going to take some of the techniques back. So this is sponsored by the Small Business Chamber of Commerce. We like to help you do more good work, getting going in a new direction with your career, starting a new project, a new campaign, or starting a new business. And we're a little bit contrarians. We don't think that market research and careful planning is how businesses actually start. Dr. Amar Bahidi has found the exact same thing, and he's written a book about it, which everybody ignores. Nobody in the SBA that I've been able to find has actually read it. Finally, the librarian, Denver Public Library, said she'd read it, and that's wonderful. And maybe she's encouraged the SBA to read it too. But the fact is that successful businesses, what's made this country great over the last 235 years is people getting an idea and they go out and do it. If that wasn't the way that startups actually prospered best, we wouldn't have a market economy, we'd have a planned economy. And you'd write a plan, do your research, file the plan with the government. So how well has that worked in planned economies? Not very well, because that technique is not nearly as powerful as the person deeply involved in something as a consumer or in a business, and you can't get your boss to listen. For whatever reason, this idea comes up and you think, I'm just going to do it. And you make the leap of faith and you try to do it a little bit. I have a book about this process. It's on Amazon. It needs to be updated. It's 99 cents, the Kindle edition. I'll give you $1 back if you don't find it helpful. It's called Daring Mighty Things, the simplest way to start your first or next new business. So go to Amazon.com, just search on John Wren, Johnwren, John Wren, Daring Mighty Things. It comes right up. Get the Kindle edition and download it, read it. It's more of a pamphlet than a book. And it talks about this fact that businesses don't start the way the SBA says that they should start. I've done startup workshops for decades. I've never had anybody come to any of my events and say, well, no, John, you're wrong. You know, I carefully followed what the SBA said to do, and I'm prospering now. Now, part of that may be this bias that's built in. You know, they don't want to give the SBA credit for what they've done themselves. That, I'll grant you, may be part of what's going on there. You'd think you'd find at least one person. So at any rate, this is the Small Business Chamber of Commerce. We have the Small Business Chamber Soulful Startup Method now. SBCC Soulful Startup Method. And the method is comprised of 4 practices: faith, it's seeing some sort of a larger meaning to life. You know, the Flourish, Martin Seligman's most recent book that I'm aware of for his positive psychology. Flourishing talks about 5 dimensions of success. And it used to be they'd only look at positive affect, and that's the first P in this PERMA, an acronym. P is positive affect, but that's not enough. E is engagement. It's Chechen Minga's flow. Do you have work that you just get caught up in? R is for relationships. How is it with you and the people around you? M is meaning. Do you see the big picture? And A is accomplishment. Is it leading to something? Now, that's not necessarily making money, but it can be. It could be becoming a bridge champion, whatever you've set your mind to do. But are you accomplishing what you set out to do? And that M, what we do is say that that should come first, especially for most people that are thinking of starting a new business. Most successful people don't do that because everything is just so wonderful. They've done so well in their corporate career that now they're going to apply that to their own business. That almost never happens. It usually happens because somebody's been fired or they got crossways because nobody's listening. They have this idea. They know it'll work. Nobody will buy into it. But one way or another, they've had a negative experience and their needs. A friend of mine wrote a book called Bounce, and it's very much what happens. There's a book, why good things almost always come from bad things. There is this bounce phenomena that something bad happens and we recover and go on. Some of us, it's splat. Instead of bounce, it's splat. They have a setback and they stay set back. You have to recover, get back on your feet and go again. And I played football. It was hit, recover, hit, recover. And that recover, I think, is a good way to think about this idea of finding that meaning in life. It's a recovery process. And it may be that, the splat is from being caught up in something that's just destroying your life. Alcoholism, drug addiction, any number of problems. Too much ice cream every night. I'm working on that one myself right now. I mean, sometimes there are small problems we can take care of ourselves with new habits, and I'm hoping the ice cream is that way for me. It was my second night last night with no ice cream. I'll let you know how I'm doing next week, or if you ask me. But that's been a big problem. I think I can overcome it myself, but there's other problems we cannot solve ourselves. And whether it's a small problem or a big problem, this first part of our method deals with that recovery, getting back up, imagination, putting our mind to work. Even if we have this idea, the aha moment, this is what I'm going to do, there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. So there's usually some green light thinking that goes into thinking about the alternatives. Now, this maybe doesn't take you more than a second, but there's that green light thinking, imagination, and our society kind of pounds that out. Look at these little bright, curious kids that go into kindergarten and they come out on the other end bored, dull. We've set up a process for snuffing out the entrepreneurial spirit in America. SBA, our school system, it's just tragic what's happening. Edmund Phelps, who I've gotten to know a bit, he's a Nobel Prize winning economist. His most recent book, Mass Flourishing. He should call it, because we're not flourishing right now as we once did in this country. And there's a reason for that. And we're losing our ability to imagine things. That's becoming seen as a waste of time. Now we've got a department in corporations that are supposed to be the creative. So the worker bees work, the thinker bees think. It doesn't work. It's not working. It's killing our country. But for the entrepreneur, it's creating all kinds of opportunities, because these are your big, stupid competitors. I'm not against big business. There's an economy of scale we all benefit from. But, that's not my area of interest. If McKinsey wants to go get the money from, a guy from McKinsey told me, how you sell consulting service? This is McKinsey's approach. There's books written about this now. Their approach is you go in and just get all the money you can, because they're not going to put your name on the tennis trophy. You never get the credit if you're the consultant. That's why they have to charge a lot of money. And the answers the consulting firm gives are so obvious. Go into a board meeting This is actual. They say what the problem is. They leave. On the way out, the two McKinsey people have a conversation. So, you know how much, you know what they should do? Well, yeah, I think pretty much anybody would know what they should do. So what's the profit impact? Okay, our take of that is 25%. So they back into the hours for the consulting project to get the answer that they could have given the board of directors sitting there at the table. But that's not how consulting is bought. Consulting is bought by the pound, just like you buy nails. A big, a thick report from McKinsey justifies their action, covers whatever part of the body you want to think about for these board members, and McKinsey gets their money because it's not, their name's not going to go on the tennis trophy. So businesses start in a different way. That's what we're trying to do with this startup method: the recovery, the imagination, green light thinking, chunking up, then red light thinking, critical thinking, and then lifelong learning. The best learning experience for an adult, I believe, is to start your own business. Sometimes you learn lessons you didn't have to learn. My favorite scene in that Frost-Nixon movie, David Frost has had this idea, he's run out of money, and he's in his bedroom, nobody's responding to his phone calls. And David Frost says, why didn't someone stop me from doing this? So in a lot of businesses, you reach that point. And if you haven't done the critical thinking, you know, if you don't have the foundation built, you don't have the faith foundation, if you're not being called to the work you're doing, instead of you're pushing the rope, things don't go well. So thinking and then lifelong learning, so that we're not just doing, but we're doing and learning from the experience, and that everybody involved in the business is learning with us. Well, today we're going to talk about three things. One is getting help when you need it. If you take a look on our Facebook page, it's facebook.com/small business chamber divided by periods. Small period business period chamber. I posted a link to this. A PhD has put down thoughts that I've had for a long time myself on how do you actually hire good people. And she raises the very, very real point that a lot of employers, especially small startups, you forget that the hiring is more like selling a new customer than anything else. You know, if we're selling a new customer, we realize we have to talk about the benefits, help them imagine the future. But sometimes we're hiring people and we forget that they may not be as enthused about taking the job as we are about getting them with whatever abilities that they have that we feel like are attractive. So take a look at our Facebook page, a cute story about that, and it sums it up. I know it's true because I've hired a lot of people for jobs that nobody's out there looking for these kinds of jobs. Route salesmen, telephone salespeople, warehouse people, clerical people. I've hired a lot of people in those jobs, and it starts with the ad. The ad has to be appealing. One little trick, when I put an ad in the paper, I almost always say free coffee, if there is free coffee. Not always free coffee anymore, but when Blair was here in Denver, they were out after the office coffee market, and most offices had free coffee. I think that's changing because there's not an office coffee marketer in Denver. Bill Boyer went away, the business pretty much went away, and probably an opportunity there for office coffee. I hadn't thought of that. Maybe I'll try that. But office coffee, if you put that little mention in the ad, it makes a huge difference. What you call the job makes a difference. I was with the Bell System when we created the term telemarketing. And back then it was telephone sales. We spent millions of dollars advertising the term telemarketing. And back then you would get a different response if the ad was for telemarketer rather than telephone salesperson. Now it's pretty much the same. We created the new term back then because at that time, the most hated term in the English language was telephone sales. Now, the most hated word right up there with it is telemarketing, but it was different when it first came out. But how you talk about the job makes a big difference. And there's a good article about that on our Facebook page. Take a look at it. Facebook.com, small business chamber, divided by period. Business cards. If you go there and see that article, you'll also see that we put up the gleanings from several brainstorming conferences and some other sources of information about business cards. How do you think about business cards? Now, even, who was it that was president of Avis and he wrote the book, Down with the Organization? I can't remember his name, but he said the only place he would maybe splurge a little bit was on business cards. Business cards are powerful. You might not even need a brochure or a website, but you definitely, if you're going to be in business, need a business card. And if you go to our Facebook page, you'll see some suggestions. And sometimes, one suggestion is keep it simple. Next suggestion, make it a mini newsletter, pack it full of information. So there's not just one way to skin a cat, but it can spark your creative imagination. And if you've got a really good business card, we are suggesting that you post it there this week. Take a picture of it, put it up as your comment. If you see a really bad business card that would make people laugh, put it up. And that's on our Small Business Chamber Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/small-business-chamber. And then the third thing I want to talk with you about today, and I need your help on this, because if I can't find one other person that's as enthused about this as I am, I'm not sure how much energy I'm going to put into it. I'm going to give it some time, but I may not put the time into it that I would if I could find one person to work with me on this. And if that's you, I'd love you to call me right after the show, next Monday or Tuesday, over the weekend, anytime. And here's what it is this Save the Caucus. I am infatuated with the caucus process because I had a neighbor that understood it very well. I was a new precinct committee person, and he showed me what he'd done. I also had, in the next precinct, the national committee woman who had been a precinct committee woman, gone up, and now she's national committee woman, who was the mother of a friend of mine when I went to high school with. And so I had these two really good examples that I learned from when I was the new precinct committee person. And I saw the caucus system at its very, very best. And that is not what exists today, is it? I mean, it's terrible today. Tuesday, a week ago, what a fiasco. But I believe it was intentional. You have two state chairs that both were on television the weekend before the caucus, trying to kill the caucus. And then you go to the caucus, and it's obvious they planted some seeds of destruction in the way that they talked with their people that trickle down from the top. It starts at the top. If you don't have enthusiastic people at the top, it's not going to work. And I have suggested that county conventions should take this up as the first thing they do. In the county convention, they should say, how do we get rid of our state chairman? Because they both need to go, both the Republicans and the Democrats, because they have done a terrible job. If they even just did that one thing, they should have been axed from each one of their parties. And that one thing, being on PBS the weekend before the caucus, saying that we need to get rid of the caucus. Let's go to the presidential primary. What a joke that that's a better thing. If you went last Tuesday and you'd never been any other time, if that would have been me, I would be wanting to get rid of it too. I mean, I can't blame you for feeling that way, but give it one more chance. That's what I would say. If you go, I had a friend that was in the restaurant business, and he said, if you go to a restaurant and it's not a good meal, give them one more chance. It may have just been a bad night. And even good restaurants have bad nights. We had a statewide bad night because of the chefs at both restaurants, and it was terrible. Now, if either one of them had been doing a good job, they would have been miles ahead now in any way you wanted to measure it. But no, they both went for the jugular of the caucus. They want to kill the caucus, and we're trying to stop the caucus killers who saved the caucus. We did it once before. Now, I'm talking about we in the imperial sense right now with this Save the Caucus, because really, truthfully, it's pretty much just me and a piece of paper I filed with the Secretary of State's office because I wanted to be open and above board. Last spring, as an individual, before Save the Caucus was reconstituted, just as an individual, I got up, looked at Google News. There, like 2 or 3 days before the end of the session, here is a bill that's going to be introduced to kill the caucus. And I thought, well, I'm dead. I can't do anything, but I can't do anything here. So I got headed towards the state capitol, called a friend of mine. The two of us were able to kill it in committee. And I'm sure that they were outraged. They had all the political leadership lined up behind it. You know, the Denver Post had written editorials about it, why the presidential primaries are better. Or why does the Post, it looks to me, I don't know if they pay these clowns down in Colorado Springs at Colorado College, have these two lowlifes that are publishing these columns that have no understanding of how the caucus system really works and the benefits of it. You know, and I believe they were just at the beck and call of the Denver Post. You know what you call that in Germany or the Soviet? That's propaganda. Denver propaganda. Denver propaganda, not the Denver Post. I mean, it's propaganda to kill the caucus. And do you know why they want to kill it? Because it'll increase their ad revenue phenomenally. That's terrible. We need to get a paper that's concerned about Colorado and not about their own. But, you know, they're on the ropes. I guess you really can't blame them. It's about to fold. You've got to believe that. I believe that. Got that big building full of empty offices. Why don't they just sublet some of the office space? You know, the Rocky Mountain News was in there. They go out. Denver Post still has the building. How does that work? You know, or I don't know, maybe they brought in some political operatives. They're giving them free. I don't know what's in the Denver Post. You know, I'd like to go down there and have a tour. I think we're entitled to, because you had to let that go through. There was a special operating agreement that gave the Denver Post that building. Yeah, remember, they were renting office space. The Rocky Mountain News had built their own office building. You know, they had they want us to recycle and save paper bags and rubber bands while they're putting up buildings and tearing them down. The Rocky Mountain News is put up the building, tear it down. Craziness, because they wanted that special operating agreement. And then they get it, the building's built, and for whatever reason, Michael Howard, who knows why he did anything. I mean, I was at Gene Amel's memorial service in Civic Center, and poor Michael Howard gets up to the microphone. He can't, put two words together. You can only imagine what it's like inside his brain. And he says, let's leave Denver. So they're gone. Maybe we can bring them back. Is Michael Howard gone now? Maybe once he's gone, we can bring him back to Denver, because the Rocky Mountain News was here in 1859, decades before the Denver Post. Denver Post was a Johnny-come-lately. Let's kill the Denver Post. Let's trade it for the Rocky Mountain News. But at any rate, the Post wants a presidential primary because ad revenues go up phenomenally. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing for the state? I say it's a bad thing. We have all these road closures throughout the summer. And I'm not even sure we get that much attention. We have this illusion, okay, if we're a presidential primary state, we're going to get more publicity. It's true they didn't hardly mention us, any of the news reports. Who cares, really? And also, there is a national move now to have a few states with early caucuses, because there's a vetting process that goes on through the caucus system. And then the rest of the states, a one-day national primary. I think this is a great idea. And if this is picked up by the Republican National Committee and Democratic National Committee, states are going to we'd be able to put our caucus authorization on eBay and make billions for the state. I mean, it'll be a valuable commodity to be one of the caucus states. I don't think they can stop us once we've been doing it for as long as we have. We've been doing it since 1912, and pretty much the form we have it now. I mean, it was so different back then. To compare the two, But I can compare it to when I learned about the caucus from Lyle Linda Smith and from Joanne Gray and from lots of other people too. It's a wonderful system. When we were doing Save the Caucus to fight Amendment 29 back in 2002, I'd go and give talks to various groups. And I gave one, there were people from all over the country. I can't remember why they came here, and they were somewhat political, and I talked about our caucus system. And they all said, this is just so wonderful. You know, why don't we have something like this? Yeah, what we do is we just have this presidential primary. And it's really meaningless. It's not like direct election of the people. There's this disconnect between the presidential primary and what happens in the convention. And actually, we want that because it's a safety valve. You know, I believe that's true. We'll see what happens this year. We're going to have a good test of the safety valve theory this year, I believe. You know, wouldn't it have been a lot easier to stop Hitler in the early days than in the later phases? And I don't know, maybe I've got the wrong idea. John Andrews is saying, you know, if Trump's elected, the Republicans should just accept it. Does he really mean that? I don't know. But what I do know is that totalitarian regimes are hard to stop once they've gotten started. And if we have any indication that's going on with Trump, which, you know, who doesn't? There should be something done now in these final primaries. Let's wake up. And maybe that'll happen now that they've winnowed the field down. And, but, you know, in some ways it doesn't matter who is president. The founders were very fearful of creating something with too much power. And it's got limited power. They've got the watchdogs right there in Washington. And if Trump goes there, I imagine they'll have a 24-hour guard on them, you know, so hopefully even if he's elected, he'll be able to be controlled. And maybe there are some good things to him. I'm, you know, shouldn't be that negative. I'm not going to take a position on any issue or candidate except for this, that the Colorado caucus is a wonderful thing. And it doesn't matter who's president. If we don't have a strong grassroots, this country's had it. Mass flourishing, Edmund Phelps says it's because, you know, he doesn't say it in these words, the grassroots dying. Used to be people driving to work would be thinking of a better way to do their job. Boy, those days are gone, aren't they? Now 80% of the people in this country hate their job. They hate the political system, they hate everything, and the way back is through these little gatherings in every community around the state every 2 years, these little points of light that Darth Vader wants to snuff out. Don't let him do it. Save the caucus. I'm going to be here next Friday. We talked about business cards. We've talked about getting the help you need. What could you talk with us about? I could have you on the show very easily. You can be in front of your own computer with a webcam. Give me a call Monday or Tuesday if you'd like to be on the show, especially if you don't agree with me on some of this stuff. I'll put you on. Number is 303-861-1447. 303-861-1447. This is John Wren, the Startup Show. And remember, this life is very short, so let's go get started. Thanks for watching.